Greetings, everyone, and a very warm welcome to everyone on this session on diversity and inclusion. I am Madhurima Agarwal, Director for Engineering Programs at NetApp and also the leader of NetApp Accelerator, NetApp's global startup program. I am pleased to host a very powerful panel with women leaders across sectors today. And let me introduce the panelists. We have on board with us Maggie Inbamuthiah, Managing Director of AnitaB.org India, a non-profit organization focused on the advancement of women in technology. Maggie, nobody really is unaware of the great work that Anita Borg Institute is doing. You have led global technical and operational projects in the HR space with corporations like ANZ, Infosys, and Dell. It's a pleasure to have you, Maggie, with us, and we look forward to your views on how we as women can emerge better and stronger. Our next panelist is Prashanti Bodugum. Prashanti is the Vice President Technology and Center Head at Walmart Global Tech India, Chennai. As the Center Head, Prashanti has a very critical role to play in enabling the long-term tech strategy for Walmart. With over 23 years of extensive cross-functional experience, Prashanti has held various senior leadership roles at Capgemini and GE in financial services and supply chain management. She joins us from Optum Global Solutions, where she has spent the last 5+ years playing a transformational role as the head of United Healthcare, corporate systems delivery, and infrastructure services. Prashanti, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Last panelist for the day is Sheenam Ohrie. Sheenam is Vice President at Dell for the Dell Digital team. Sheenam has been in the industry for over 27 years and has witnessed major changes in women's progress in the tech world. As a leader, she aims to enable women to grow and thrive by creating connections, providing leadership expertise, and building a culture that values diverse perspectives. Thank you all for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Our focus today is on unlocking the power of women in tech. And as women leaders and technology heads, I have a feeling our session will see some exciting insights on building opportunities for women and skilling them for a competitive and evolving market. So, with that, let's jump into the conversation. We love data, right? So, according to recent research, women now make up to 34% of the IT workforce in India, with the majority of these workers under the age of 30. We are quite a young nation. The country is now almost at 50-50 gender parity in STEM graduates. While this is heartening, the challenge is in ensuring diversity through middle management and leadership roles. I would like to first come to Sheenam. Sheenam, many corporates have women returnee programs to reskill their returning female employees. But do the corporates design focused programs and initiatives at senior leadership levels to achieve gender parity?
I think this is an excellent question, and I must tell you that at Dell, and I can talk about what we do. This is really a very serious agenda. Earlier this year, we actually introduced our 2030 moonshot goals, which talked about we would have by 2030 at least 50% of our workforce would be women and 40% of our leadership would be women, right? And that means that the middle management and the layer of women leaders that are getting into the executive rung have to be focused on. So we run very specific programs for women managers and also for women who want to get into the technical side. So one program is called Rise, which is really focused on the middle management women leaders who are aspiring, who are top talent, and who we think can fit into executive roles whenever they open up. So this is a program that enables them to understand themselves, b, challenge their own biases, so to say, about themselves, right? And then they get them prepared for much bigger opportunities. The other program that I talked about, which was Edge, is more for the technical side of leadership, because that's also something that we want to focus on. And that really focuses on how you would increase and improve on your tech ladder. So these are two very marquee programs that we have got for women at the middle management. The other things that we are focusing on from a women perspective and women, a director, senior director, VP level, is taking them through various kinds of programs at each level to ensure that they can get to the next level. So I do believe organizations today, and I'm sure other organizations are doing the same, are now focusing on how can we enhance the senior leadership level for our women.
Prashanti, let's take a step back, right? We talked about women, design focused programs for women once they are in the corporate field. How do you think, how we can encourage more small town candidates to even take up STEM and come into this field, vis-a-vis the urban population? How do you ensure that there is diversity at a grassroots level?
Another very good question, Madhurima. It's actually very encouraging to see a lot of young girls coming from smaller towns, completing their engineering degrees, bagging campus placements, and it's no surprise to see almost when we start the careers, of the young girls today in any organization, we almost see a 50-50, ratio of girls joining these, programs or campus programs. And what's more heartening to see is the sense on their faces, of achieving a milestone, a self-empowered financial freedom and the independence, and wanting that, that strong aspiration to, define their own life goals. So we see a lot of that coming up, and most of these stories, when you look through and you see in every campus introductions that you go through, as a leader, you feel it very, very gratifying, because the young girls seem to have a greater purpose. However, what I see is, for a to a large extent, I think we are focusing a lot on emerging technology trends, trying to kind of keep the foundational skills up and going. So any university, any college, everybody pretty much has it. If not, the rest of it is being done by the social media, be it on Twitter or LinkedIn. Several courses, that actually the girls already know how to master. What I feel, my opinion, is, how do we really introduce life skills to these girls? Um, the world that they're going to come is wide open. It's not protected any longer by a father or a brother or a husband, right? I mean, this is about their own emotional quotient in terms of, how do they really make those judgments? And to me, I feel the colleges and universities should probably be focusing more on the life skills and what should actually be a navigational skill that they should master, more than the emerging technologies.
Maggie, I see you want to add to this. I can see that excitement on your face.
One thing which I see is lack of direction, lack of exposure, and that is definitely some things we need to do in giving them hands-on exposure and the confidence. So I kind of agree with the life skills you talk about, because technical skills can be picked up even on the job. We can give them training, teach them, because theoretically they know, it's the practical skills they lack. But they also really need skills on holding their aspirations in spite of what the social expectations are, and reaching out and networking to turn those aspirations into achievable goals, and finally having the confidence and the presentation skills to really get that and make a mark. We've been running programs, but there is quite a bit of work to be done, to enable women, girl students from the smaller cities, to really make an impact on the technology workforce. This is something that I would add to this conversation.
Sheenam, you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, started a program last year where we actually got women from rural colleges to come and do an internship with us, and then we hired them. So I would, kind of add to what Prashanti said. I think what we saw was hunger, we saw passion. But what these girls need, these young girls, aspirational girls need, is teaching them soft skills, and we are doing exactly that, right? So every Saturday we take them through one specific soft skill kind of a workshop to kind of help them get ready for the future. Because the gap from the campus to the corporate, specifically for young girls from rural STEM colleges, rural engineering colleges, I think that's an enabler that we should all be thinking about.
Yeah, very rightly said, Sheenam. Even at NetApp, right? And I think across most corporates today, there is that focus on making sure that the next level of women in STEM builds up. So we go out and, as part of our CSR activities, as part of business activities, engage with women, and give them the required training on the tech side and on the soft skill side. And since we have been talking about soft skills, that actually brings me to my next question. And here I want all of you, probably go back 20 years in your journey when you were a newbie in this tech world, right? A young girl, with stars in her eyes, entering this. Did you feel intimidated? Was there something that you recall specifically from those early days?
No, no. I was going to say, I'm going to be very vulnerable here. I'm sure it's bringing a smile on all of our faces, Sheenam and Maggie. Initial years, I think my focus was on learning new things. So never really had seen it as a problem, right? Because you're so focused on learning and, you just want to excel. So nobody else is around you, just except you and your learning and how you want to excel. I think, however, as I started getting into, the leader roles, right? Team lead, then the manager, and then, so on. I think it slowly started dawning on me, especially when, you're in social events or, when you see many of the men would go on a nicotine break and you're just left alone in a meeting because, rest of them are all gone. Or being a single woman in offsites, many a time I think, that's when you started feeling, oh my god, this is just me here. And I think, and on top of it, I think the social pressure, it's like, how do you really cope with it? You're in a offsite and you want to go back home because you want to attend to your children, who probably are needing you the most, right? I think the whole thing, if I have to summarize, what really helped me in this whole journey was accepting the problem. I accepted it way ahead of the time. Um, and then started detaching myself from it, saying, so what? I mean, yes, this is what I aspire to be. So how do I really now start addressing it, right? Then I started looking at incremental changes that I can make, be it in terms of at home or at work, and the commitment towards making those changes. It's like if I said, yes, it's a quality time that matters to me with my children, not the quantity time. I stuck to it and I kept reiterating it, so that everybody understands it. And, end of the day, I don't feel guilty about it. And then most important was to take time to reflect on it. How am I really doing? How am I really coping up with each one of these things that I laid out, right? So I think that actually kept me going. And over a period, I think, what I fundamentally started believing in is you either win or you're learning. So the minute you kind of take to that motto, I think things started becoming much more easier and acceptable, just not to you, but to your family and to the every organization, that I had been working with.
Thanks, Prashanti. Thanks, for sharing that with us. Sheenam, would you like to share what
Yeah,
happened 20
so
years back?
I joined a startup, right? My first job was a startup. There were like 25 of us which were recruited, who were recruited from a walk-in interview and made the company a size of 40. So the question of diversity, the question of women at that point of time was just not there. And you just grew up with the organization. And I actually, in the first 10, 12 years of my career, never knew what diversity was, right? We were not never introduced to that concept. And like Prashanti said, once we're gone for an offsite, and I was the only woman over there. And the resort manager, she was a lady, and she asked, "Why is there only one woman in 40 of you?" And that was the first time I said, "Am I different?" Right? It was the first instance of saying, "Am I different?" Having said that, I think women need to make priorities, choose priorities in life. And I think one advice I give to all the women that I meet is um, make those decisions, because those decisions are point decisions. At some point of time, you will have to prioritize family. At some point of time, you will have to prioritize your career. You may want not need to go to an evening event, and how do you make up for that through networking is something that you have to constantly think about. So there is an additional pressure on you, but be happy about a decision that you made, right? That when you are happy, your ecosystem is happy. If your ecosystem is happy, you get happier and productivity improves. But yes, women definitely need to be far more creative in managing their aspirations and their career growth. That much is very, very true even today.
Thanks, Sheenam. Maggie, talking about creativity with the wide, and I can say diversity of women that you work with, as part of your role. What are some of the things, and you can draw upon your own experiences as well, that you think where this creativity comes in?
I'm glad you framed the question like that because that is what I was going to draw on. Like Sheenam, I also started with a startup. It was a bigger startup, Infosys, but it was in a very much a startup mode when I joined. In hindsight, I was really lucky because the teams I worked in the first up to 3 4 years were very accommodative, and I had just gotten used to the idea of being the one woman in the entire team. But I never have felt left out because of anything. Because of one, like Prashanti said, maybe the focus was on learning or whatever it is. But it was a very, very inclusive environment. But I do talk to a lot of women, and it is disheartening to see that the condition still continues. Still, a lot of women talk about being the only woman in the team. But what I'm also hearing, and this is something I would share with everyone, is the ones who are making the difference are the ones who voice for it and ask. So they go ahead and tell their manager, you cannot walk out on me on a break and talk about a customer issue there when I'm not there, because I'm part of the solution and need to be heard and I need to know what's going on. So sometimes just asking goes a long way, because a lot of the unconscious bias we face is exactly that, unconscious, and it's not intentional. So in many cases, by voicing out and sharing how we feel or what we are losing out from the work component because of a particular incident or whatever, helps the team to cope up with it and a step up so that these things are not missed out by women. The second thing is also a support system, not just at home, but also at work. We have co-workers covering for each other. Building that network really helps. So all of us get to a point, women particularly, where personal priorities and the work priorities have to be scheduled and taken care of accordingly. So sometimes when there is a personal priority, a family-based priority, having somebody at work to help you manage that until you can come back to the focus really helps. So building relationships both at work and at home is a big area.
Great, thanks, Maggie. In fact, I do want to share one experience that I had in my life. Two of you started at startups. I actually started a startup. So I was a founder, and this was during my undergraduate days, my first startup. And I can clearly recall, right, when a client would visit, they would ask like, so where's the boss, or where's your manager? And I'm like, I'm the founder. You can talk to me. The look on their face sometimes was just like, huh? can How can somebody, so young and on top of that, just a girl, be a founder of a successful company? But though, and that's where, this unconscious bias creeps in even today. Not going too far back, as all of us have witnessed, being the only women in the room, people sometimes tends to just come and assume that you're probably the secretary, despite everything. You're having a seat at the table. If they want coffee, they'd look at you and you're like, yeah, fine. I mean, that's not my job. But how do women tackle that, right? Those are things which is where that unconscious bias creeps in. Probably they would look at my male colleague who's in fact who's junior to me and assume that he's the boss, right? I'm sure all of you, nodding your heads, you've kind of identify with some of these scenarios. So yeah, I think the advice that Sheenam, Prashanti, and Maggie, all of you shared, make sure that you hold your own. uh, be part of the team, ensure, ask for it, which I think is very important. We have to ask for what is rightfully ours. That helps. But having said that, I would like to hear from all of you more about how do you tackle this unconscious bias. What advice would you have? And anybody can go first, whoever feels the strongest about this.
So I'm going to build on what Maggie said, right? And I think you have to put the elephant on the table. You have to say, I felt this. When you did this, I felt this. So, earlier in life, when, people would go out for a smoke break, I know things could get discussed, and, you know, it would get referenced in a next conversation. I would say, really, when was this discussed? And people say, no, we discussed this then, but I was not around. So how did you discuss something that was professional, that affected me and my team when I was not around? And people start to think about it. So it's your job to put those unconscious conscious biases on the table. The other thing that I would also want to add from an organization perspective is organizations also need to run this program. And I'm sure you've heard about it, but we run this program called Many Advocating Real Change. It used to be called Men Advocating Real Change, but it's all about that. It's not just about gender diversity, it's more about inclusion, right? What are the kind of biases that people have in their mind when they see somebody who's fat, somebody who's divorced, somebody who's a single child or a child of a divorced parents? Those are the kind of things that we need to bring onto the table so that people start to understand that uh, these biases need to be shattered in some ways.
I think, like Sheenam said, right, these are very deeply embedded systemic biases. And each day these are the biases that are influencing our own thinking. I would say even we as women, I probably would have had the easiest maternity, process, during or a childbirth process. So, but I cannot apply the same lens to somebody who is going through and who is probably needing more medical attention or a personal attention, and start saying, hey, I just took 2 weeks leave, why would you need so much leave, right? I mean, so we started, I think it starts within from us as well sometimes. And I think it's just unconsciously we discriminate just women with women or women with men and so on and so forth. So for me, I think first and foremost, what is important is to help create a workplace that respects and values differences, right? And the best way to do it is understanding your boundary, using affirmative language, creating a safety net, being inclusive, and staying connected. I think that at a start creates a very good foundation for everybody to be very safe, and start thinking that the environment is very safe for them to continue, right? And once you establish that, it's going to be very helpful, or you can be aware of the biases. You can look at what the data is telling you and focus more on the facts, and start taking actions that are more impactful for the organization, versus just going on what you would think as an intuition. So I've been using that quite a bit. I wouldn't say that it's been always there. Some of the organizations do it very well, and I'm very fortunate to be in Walmart right now, because this is something which is part of the culture. And assuming that positive intent and keeping it going every single day, and taking decisions based on the data, probably goes a long way here.
Thanks. I think this you've brought out various facets to this, and very beautifully. So we should call out biases when we recognize that things have happened which shouldn't have happened, which could be taking a decision or talking about your teams when you were not in the room or when you were not present. Address it head on, as Sheenam said. Put the elephant on the table. And then, Prashanti, I just loved what you talked about, right? We have to be inclusive and also recognize that even within women, there is diversity, and everybody has different experiences, different challenges, and create that safe space for everybody to, feel comfortable to talk about it and bring out and share, amongst like-minded people what they are going through, and expect that support from the organization. Maggie, I will come to you with a different question, right? And Tell me, do you think women are wired differently when it comes to dealing with organizational challenges?
I'm going to give a small anecdote. I was talking to somebody who runs a school in Tiruvannamalai. She runs a school completely based on nature. She gave a very interesting perspective. She says a lot of the work women do for not for payment. They do a lot of craft, they uphold the traditions, they do a lot of cooking, whatever, right? When it becomes a professional work and starts earning money, typically that is headed by men. So I do think, yes, there is a bit of a wiring difference in the sense the economic and how do you look at it from a completely business perspective differs between the two genders to some extent. And we are thankfully moving towards an environment where it is okay to bring both these gender factors into the corporate world and how we run businesses. When I started my work, that was not the case. We were asked to put our emotions in the back burner and then have this straightforward, how do you interact formally, how do you not talk about your family when you're at work and things like that. Um, thanks to the changes in the entire diversity space, as well as a big thanks from that perspective to Corona, that we are all used to having pets jumping in on calls and kids coming in and the cooker whistle going in the back end. So so that is the difference, but the difference is good because that helps us look at things in a more holistic way. Women are able to look at the relationship between things and look at things a lot more holistically, and how it can be a solution can be sustainable and collaborative is the strengths I really think women largely bring. I would say there are exceptions to every rule. We cannot generalize a whole gender based on that. But in generally, that those are the strengths that women would bring to the table, whereas men would bring more of a precision and completely objective and data-driven approach. That's again a general perception. But putting these two together is a winning solution. So yes, there is a difference in how things are wired, and we should embrace it unapologetically and bring it to the forefront.
Have you seen in your role, as heading a center, do women and men approach the workplace challenges differently?
Absolutely, Madhurima. I think the whole thought process of how a woman deals with workplace challenges is very different to how the men do it. I kind of agree to what Maggie was talking earlier. And a simple way to look at it is a train analogy that I would like to give. While men operate in the compartments, and then they stick to that compartment, and have an opportunity to de-link between the two compartments, women take it as a continuity. They kind of, start with their day with, work at home. They continue with the children and then they come to work. And so there is a lot of that connection that or the link that they use, both analytical and intuition going hand in hand with them. And, they kind of navigate through the compartments. In the process, while it helps the woman to kind of gain that holistic view of things and not miss out and give a 360-degree view, which is where I see many women, when you have asked them for an opinion, their thought process is very different from what a man would answer, and you would see that. And I think that comes inherently because you kind of connect the dots. However, many times it's also a drain in energy, because if you start on a negative start of a day, you got a plate or something just happened with your work, at home work, then that negativity just continues into your day throughout the day. So the best way is, how do you really, when required, be aware of it, disconnect, and start fresh, so that you can keep that chain to your advantage, but not let it go down. I think that's where probably women needs to balance it out. And there are many mechanisms, and I think the best one to talk about is the meditation, which can come to your rescue. But I can see Maggie and Sheenam nodding their heads. So your thoughts?
I just want to say I like how you started on the train and ended the train. That was really good.
In fact, what you said, Prashanti, that brings me to the next point. I think women make great leaders, and the world has started to recognize that. In fact, the fact that Goldman Sachs announced that it will not take a company to IPO until unless it has a woman on its board, that talks about the power of women that's being recognized in leadership positions. And it is this analogy, right, linking the compartments, getting a big picture view of what's going on, taking a view that the leadership lens that women can apply with the strengths that are inherent to them, like empathy, like understanding, how things move together and not just isolating them to certain things. Those are some skills which everybody talks about when talking about traits of leadership, and in it's natural to us, talking about multitasking, talking about switching from one situation to another, jumping quickly and still maintaining that flow. That's natural. So I'm actually surprised how come women don't hold all the leadership positions in the world.
Amen to that.
Okay. Anyway, so I think we are almost at the top of the hour that we got assigned. But I would like each of you to take a couple of minutes to reflect and share with us some of the key takeaways from your career growth. Right, all of you today are at leadership positions. What advice would you like to give to our audience who's young and raring? Uh, to help them reach where you are and beyond. Sheenam, would you like to go?
Sure. So I think I'm going to be building on what Prashanti had said earlier. And, there is a trait that women have. Are we good enough? We keep asking ourselves this question. And there's this guilt factor that goes on with us, right? And I'll take you back to a recent RISE interaction that I did with the women, right? We had set up very deliberately some very strict deadlines for them. So they said, no, you have to balance work and home in a COVID situation. Now you have to give 3 deliverables back to you guys. How is it possible? So I said, it's the first iteration, right? You have to submit. Nobody asked you for it to be perfect. Have you even asked anybody, can I present a draft and go back and change that? I said, really? Yeah, we never thought about it. And intrinsically, I think we are built that our first deliverable has to be picture perfect. So therefore, my advice would be, please let go of that bias. In my opinion, that's a big bias that we as women carry about ourselves. Let go of the guilt, right? Like Maggie said, go out, find yourself the support system. Okay, if you can't, if you may have a sick child at home and there's an important meeting to go to, balance it out, right? Figure out, ask your spouse, ask the neighbor, something, do something, but figure that out. So that would be the second point that I would say, balance, and don't be guilty about it again. And the last one that I would say is that be happy. Right? You are the fulcrum of your home ecosystem. If you are not happy, your home is not happy. If your home is not happy, you will never be happy at work. You will never be productive. So be happy, make choices, and be happy about it.
I actually want to call out one of my mentors earlier in my career. Her advice to me was, no role is small or big. Just pick it, try to find the relevance of what you're trying to solve, and the passion will follow, because you're trying to connect it into a problem that you're trying to solve. Honestly, I think that's one of the best advices that I ever received, because every single career choice that I made has been based on that. It was never about what's the next title. It's always about, what role am I playing, what business problem am I trying to solve, and how am I going to be relevant in the industry because of that. And hence I would tie it back to what I would have called it as experiential learning, because every single career move has been a learning on its own self. And with that, combined that with agility, because every one of them will need you to be agile. You just cannot apply the same rule that worked for you in the prior role work for you in the new role. So how do you really start keeping yourself agile and then continue to learn? If you kind of merge these two, I think nobody can stop you in terms of how you can create your own career and the happiness that comes with it.
Thanks, Madhurima. I'll bring in a slightly different perspective to bring the whole thing together. Um, so growing up, all of us would have seen, at least many of us would have seen our mothers and all the neighborhood aunts sitting together every evening in the Ada, and generally talking about things. I don't even know what they talked. But I would say, as a women, it is inbuilt in us to come together as a community and draw support from each other. And then that's what we saw happening in those evenings when we were children. So my thing would be never to underestimate that, building that network. So what is happening in today's world is with the challenges on our time due to career and personal life, and both have become extremely demanding, is we don't take the time to invest in ourselves, in our personal networks, friendships, support systems, and in general community, other women especially. But in Anitabi and even before that, I've seen this again and again that when women come together, magic happens. One is you realize that I'm not alone, that there is one more woman. Either she's gone through similar challenges or slightly different and she's done something. You either draw inspiration from it or you at least have a forum where these things can be understood and can be discussed. So the very minute I realize I'm not alone in this, it just brings a tremendous amount of power and opens up solutions to solve any issue that comes up, be it personal or career wise. So, and again, at two levels. One is at your peer level, absolutely important to have a community with not necessarily agenda, but a community of people whom we can rely on for many things. And also investing proactively in the team that reports into you, because that is one of the most important ways for you to grow and build a resilient team that supports you as well, which goes a long way. So community is what I want to, in my conversation today with.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Maggie, and that brings to my mind a book that I had read previously and keep reading again and again. That's Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by John Gray. This talks about this, right? How women draw strength in discussing with each other, in sharing with each other, and helping each other, right? And this forum is an example of that, where all of you have come together and shared some of the magic tips that have worked for you to help you arrive at where we are. Let me take a shot at just summarizing our conversation, and making sure that the audience doesn't miss any of the important parts. And given that we are at a entrepreneur conference, I'm going to use some of the terms. So build your MVP. Don't wait for the product to be perfect before you launch it, and that's you. Keep building. Keep using your network to grow. Reach out to people. Don't try to do everything on your own, right? You don't have to be the single founder of your company. You can leverage your senior leadership team and your board of directors, to build your company into the most successful company the world has ever seen. In between, there will be challenges. You will find detractors. You'll hear a lot of no from investors, potential people who wanted to work with, but they don't see the value in you. It's okay, just go to the next place. Don't lose heart. And again, it's to sum it all, be happy as an entrepreneur who is developing yourself. Have that passion, have that joy in the world around you, because that's what makes it meaningful at the end. So, with that, I would like to thank our panel. It's been a pleasure to have you with us. Thanks for all the insights, and may the tribe grow. Thanks.